Tonight, exhausted and overworked. Nurses tell STV News they feel they're letting patients down and staffing shortages are leaving them burnt out.
As a nurse, you come in to help people, and if you're leaving feeling like maybe you've not helped people, that's where the stress comes in.
Also making the headlines, an Edinburgh comedy club has U-turned and apologised to SNP MP Joanna Cherry after it cancelled her event amid concerns from staff.
In sport, we hear from the Rangers and Celtic managers ahead of the final Old Firm derby of the season.
And the Scots supervans going boom bang a bang for Eurovision. I'm Courtney Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Exhausted and overworked nurses have told STV News they feel like they're letting patients down due to a chronic lack of staff. A survey from the union Unison found 3/4 of nurses are confronted with staff shortages on their ward every day.
They say even when concerns over staffing are escalated, there's no solution, leading to burnouts and low morale. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
Wonderful, thank you so much, thank you.
Starting the weekend with some sweetness. Ice cream van man Ramo is giving back to staff at Glasgow's Beats and Cancer Centre, where he has been going through chemotherapy.
You're in here for 9-10 hours for a session of chemo, and it gives you a lot of time to think, and I thought to myself, what can I do to make people happy, put a smile on people's face, and ice cream is my thing. It puts a smile on everybody's face. So I thought it'd be a lovely thing to do for the staff. The staff are fantastic.
But the problem, health unions say, is that there's just not enough of them. A new survey from Unison found almost 3/4 of nurses face staff shortages on their ward every day, having a negative impact on patient care. Kirsty's worked as a nurse in Fife for more than a decade, but says the problem is widespread.
To meet the workload demands without the staffing resources is an impossible task. You can't nurse the way that you want to, the way the gold standard is, because you have to do what you can to get through the day. So, and if you're, as a nurse, you come in to help people, and if you're leaving feeling like maybe you've not helped people, that's where the stress comes in.
We spoke to nurses here who didn't want to go on camera, but told us even under the current staffing pressures, there's only so much work they can do at the front door when it's becoming increasingly difficult to then discharge patients back into the community.
Combined with more nurses opting for better paying agency shifts, unions say the system is unsustainable.
There are tens of thousands of vacancies for registered nurses across NHS Scotland. They need to have a really robust workforce plan developed as soon as possible for the next 10, 15 years. Workforce plans are done every year. I work beside people who put a lot of work into those plans, but they actually mean nothing. They're left on paper, sitting on somebody's shelf, and nothing happens with them. So NHS Fife could request as many nurses as they want, but if Scottish Government don't train those nurses, we ain't getting them.
The Health Secretary, Michael Matheson, wasn't available for interview today, but said the new Nursing and Midwifery Task Force will develop plans for retaining and recruiting more staff. And nurses in Scotland remain the best paid in the UK. But with continual staff burnout, shortages and low recruitment levels, it's a workforce that doesn't always feel valued. Laura Alderman, STV News.
The Stand Comedy Club has backed down in its row with SNP MP Joanna Cherry. Club bosses had cancelled a fringe show because some staff were uncomfortable with Miss Cherry's views.
Today, the Stand is offering a full apology and reinstating the event. Our political editor, Colin Mackay, joins us now. And Colin, this is quite the climb down.
It really is, John. The Stand Comedy Club had invited Joanna Cherry to take part in an In Conversation With event during the Fringe this summer, but then they cancelled it because they said that some of their staff were unwilling to work with her because of her views on trans rights. Now, Joanna Cherry felt that she was being discriminated against because she doesn't think men should be able to self-identify as women. She's been a vocal critic of the Scottish Government's plans for gender recognition reform reform, and she threatened legal action against the Stand. But today the club has issued a statement saying that it publicly and unreservedly apologises to Ms Cherry. They accept that cancelling the event was unfair and constituted unlawful discrimination. Joanna Cherry is accepting the apology and says that this is a warning to others.
It's a warning that the law states very clearly that philosophical beliefs are a protected characteristic, and the beliefs which I hold, which are that men can't be lesbians and that men can't simply change their sex by saying so, that those are beliefs which, as well as being rooted in science, are beliefs that are protected by law in this country.
So the show will go on, and the Stand Comedy Club say that they'll donate their share of any profit to the Edinburgh Food Project. Joanna Cherry will go ahead with the event, although she admits that there will probably be protests, possibly even disruption at it, but she has withdrawn her threat of legal action because on this, she's won.
Colin at the Scottish Parliament, thank you. An emergency ferry brought in to help ease the mounting pressures on services to and from the island of Arran has made its first crossing after weeks of delays. CalMac has borrowed the MV Alfred from the Orkney operator Pentland Ferries for 9 months at a cost of £9 million in an attempt to improve the situation for islanders.
Emergency repairs had to be carried out on the vessel before it could begin the route after hydraulic failure. Vanessa Taft's been on the first crossing and sent this report.
Ready to set sail. The MV Alfred is a lifeline ferry that's been drafted in to help an island in desperate need of better connectivity. For those on its first journey to Arran today, it was a moment of relief.
We were anxious that we might not get on, but they assured us we would, and then they told us that there was this smashing new catamaran, so it's all joy to us. It's great.
No bacon rolls though. Factor for people maybe getting stuck. They get the accommodation, but the ferry wasn't available, so this will be super.
This route's very, very important to the North Ayrshire economy as a whole, so for this to now be a two-vessel service once again, even if it's not the same as what we're used to expecting over here, it's actually great to see that we've got this happening now.
It's been far from plain sailing for this vessel. Before it could even get to this stage, it had to undergo emergency repairs for an hydraulic issue. Until now, there had only been one other ferry making the crossing from Ardrossan here to the pier in Brodick. However, for passengers, it is going to be operated on a first-come, first-served basis. Islanders have been waiting 6 months for another ferry to join the fleet.
We depend upon a reliable, resilient ferry service for everything. And I'm sure today there will be a lot of people, including the lorry drivers, who will be so delighted that they won't have to either go to the north end of the island and try and use the baby ferry, or actually not be able to deliver goods. And that has huge implications for businesses on the island.
But as it stands, the Alfred is only on loan to CalMac for 9 months at a cost of £9 million. Ironically today, the co-leader of the Scottish Greens, Lorna Slater, was revealed as having hired a private boat to get to a work event rather than using a government ferry.
It will be a really good service over the next few months. And indeed, we look further forward, we've got new vessels on order, large vessels, and also smaller vessels have been planned. So over the next few years, we'll see the CalMac fleet expand and offer much greater resilience and indeed more capacity.
Sailings will continue for the next 2 weeks on a trial basis before potentially being kept on the route. But for islanders, this is only a temporary solution to a long-term problem. Vanessa Taft, STV News, on board the MV Alfred.
Now, businesses have urged the Scottish Government to proceed with caution over plans to ban the sale of peat. People in the horticulture and whisky industries were among those asked to air their views in a consultation which closed today.
Peatlands store vast amounts of carbon, and the ban aims to help combat climate change. Our climate correspondent Caroline Lewis has been finding out more.
Covering more than a fifth of Scotland, peatland is one of our greatest assets in combating climate change. But much of it is in pretty poor shape after being drained to make way for crops or cut for horticulture, whisky or fuel. Today, 80% of Scotland's peatland is damaged in some way.
We've lost a habitat that is really important to Scotland. It supports biodiversity, but it also captures a huge amount of carbon. It's, arguably more important or more valuable to us than woodland planting, restoring peat bogs.
This decade, the government will spend £250,000 on peatland restoration. But 1 metre depth of healthy peat takes 1,000 years to form.
At the moment, while we do that and extract, it's like trying to fill the bath with the plug out.
Peatland's wet and acidic conditions mean dead plant material can't fully decompose, trapping carbon underground that would have been released into the atmosphere. Peatlands store twice as much carbon as all the Earth's forests, and Scotland's alone hold the equivalent of 140 years' worth of greenhouse gas emissions. But when damaged, peat turns from carbon sink to carbon spewer, kicking out 2 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide worldwide every year.
But peatlands also play a vital role in protecting us against the changing climate, because when they're healthy, they can stop the spread of wildfires and mitigate against the effects of drought and flooding.
But peat has a long history in Scotland. This family business in Aberdeenshire has been cutting and selling peat since 1905, producing 6,000 tonnes a year for fuel and maltings.
Peat is all we do. We don't have any other enterprises. So if peat sales were banned, that we would have to close. I think the malting industry, that should probably be an exception, because Scottish whisky is so important to the economy, and it's unthinkable that you would bring peat in from abroad or something like that to produce whisky.
Whisky accounts for more than a quarter of all Scotland's goods exports, but the industry is responsible for just 1% of peat extracted in Scotland.
We are funding research and also monitoring research, looking at whether there would be alternatives to peat. There are just none available at the moment. We are taking that responsibility seriously. We do look at how we can maximise efficiency, but also we do have a longer term ambition. It is just not something that is viable today.
The majority of peat extracted in Scotland is used in horticulture, and that is what the government plans to ban first. Ken is a specialist in rhododendrons and azaleas, which he grows in his nursery in Perth.
So these plants have evolved to grow on peat. Take peat away from them, it's very difficult to find anything else that they'll grow in. We've cut our peat percentage in the mixes that we grow these plants down to about 40%, and it works. But once we get much below that, you start seeing deterioration.
England and Wales plan to ban the sale of peat to amateur gardeners by the end of next year and professionals by 2026. Ken says he fears the government here will follow suit and implored them to take a nuanced approach.
Let's certainly reduce the use of peat down to an absolute minimum. What we'd like is for rhododendrons and azaleas and other acid-loving plants to be allowed to use a limited amount of peat.
The government will now work out how and when it will implement bans and just how long businesses have to adapt.
So, Caroline, we've heard from industry. What's the latest from the Scottish Government on this?
Well, look, we're not going to have a definitive timeline for a while the government sifts through all this feedback. But the Rural Affairs Minister has said today that she wants this plan to be ambitious. And that's because last year, damaged peatland alone accounted for 15% of Scotland's total emissions, which is a staggering amount. So this isn't a case of if peat bans are going to come in, it's when, and if and who are going to be the exception. And
is there any indication of the timescale?
Well, next year, England and Wales are planning the sale of peat to amateur gardeners, so that's the public. So it's a waiting game to see if the Scottish Government decides to follow the same timeline or they decide to delay. Again, the Rural Affairs Minister said that she really wants to listen to those concerns, particularly from the horticultural industry, proceed with caution and be realistic. As for the whisky industry, they've been told that there isn't, well, the intention is that they won't be part of a ban because they are such a small part of the problem.
Caroline, thank you. To other stories, and a 16-year-old girl has been charged in connection with an assault on 3 teachers and a pupil at a Renfrewshire school. It comes as teachers are calling for more protection from abuse and assault in schools. The president of the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association has told her conference that increasingly classrooms are not safe spaces for learning. The Education Secretary says the culture in schools has changed since the pandemic.
At worst, mob rule prevails in classrooms and corridors. In many schools, teachers are faced with torrents of verbal abuse during lessons. The number of violent incidents reported is increasing. A culture of accommodating the needs of the transgressor has become the default position in some places. Learners that do come to school to learn do not feel secure.
Some of the examples of extreme behaviour are not necessarily examples of the whole picture, but there is something happening, I think, in our schools around about a shift in behaviour. And what that means for learning and teaching is really key, because it changes the way that you interact with your classes, it changes the way you're able to deliver course content.
A 16-year-old boy suffered an electric shock after falling onto overhead power lines at Edinburgh Waverley. The teenager fell from the roof of the railway station near its entrance on Waverley Bridge around 11 o'clock on Monday night. He was taken to hospital. The British Transport Police is appealing for witnesses.
Aberdeen's legendary European Cup Winners' Cup side have been made freemen of the city in a special ceremony at Pittodrie Stadium. The manager, Sir Alec Ferguson, and his playing squad from that victory over Real Madrid in May 1983 were celebrated in front of fans before receiving the honour. Fishing leaders are accusing the Scottish Government of failing to make the case for highly protected marine areas. The proposals would ban all types of fishing in 10% of Scottish waters to protect the environment. The head of the Scottish Fishermen's Federation has urged ministers to have more meaningful engagement with the industry. The Scottish Government insists it is listening to their concerns. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
In coastal communities like this, fishermen feel a long way from decisions that could determine the future of their livelihoods. They want government ministers to speak to them directly about the potential impact of highly protected marine areas.
Get them into meetings face to face with the people that are really going to be displaced or affected by this, and get a conversation going, not a consultation with fixed questions that don't really answer anything.
HPMAs would ban fishing in 10% of Scotland's coastal waters. Fishing organisations are united in their opposition to the plans.
There was no engagement with the industry about whether there should be HPMAs, so it's been all about we've decided that there should be them, so let's talk about how. We feel that the case has not been made. So it's about that, making that engagement much more meaningful and genuine, and not just about saying, well, we've decided what to do, so now let's talk about how to do it.
I know that people are worried about what change might mean for coastal communities.
The Rural Affairs Secretary addressed a conference of industry leaders insisting the Scottish Government is in listening mode.
The consultation has been a critical part of that. Again, the engagements that I'll be undertaking today and with the Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero, Mary McCallan, we want to get out and about and speak to industry, to speak to the communities who could be affected. We want to hear what they've got to say, and I think we are just really keen to let people know that we are listening. But again, we need to consider all the views that we've heard so far to determine how we move forward.
Fishing communities will have to wait until ministers have examined the responses to their consultation before finding out the next stage in this process. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Other stories in the West, and the former boss of a Lanarkshire waste disposal company has told a court the allegations against him were based on the evidence of 2 ex-employees with an axe to grind, and SEPA officials were stupid to listen to them. Gary Pettigrew and his firm Healthcare Environmental Services are accused of breaching regulations for the safe storage of medical waste. Mr Pettigrew, who denies the charges, claims the site at Shorts was within its permit limit. Civilian mountain rescue teams in Scotland responded to the highest number of call-outs on record last year. A report from Scottish Mountain Rescue showed they responded to 709 calls. That's up from 698 in 2021. Well, to the sport now, and although it's not something you can normally say about the Old Firm, Rahman, not much at stake.
Yeah, it's always plenty at stake at this fixture, John. You go to Sauchiehall Street tonight and shout there's nothing at stake. There always is. It's the final Old Firm derby of the season. Celtic go to Ibrox as champions, and Rangers have yet to defeat their city rivals this season. Good evening. Michael Beale has challenged his Rangers players to raise their game and defeat Celtic for the first time this season. Beale admits a win would give the fans a lift going into the summer break. Meanwhile, Ange Postecoglou expects the match to have the usual derby traits. That's despite his team already wrapping up the title.
Tomorrow will be the 6th and final Old Firm derby of the season. The fixture has been grim viewing for Rangers fans. Their team has lost 4 games and drawn the other against their city rivals.
This game is hugely important to everybody, not 1 or 2 people or a certain amount. Every single person in this city has got a say and a feeling and an allegiance to one of these 2 teams, and I think the players are aware that they would like to give their fans something to hold on to over the summer.
I think it's so important tomorrow for the fans. More than anything, they've stuck with us. It has been a disappointing campaign, and you know they do deserve better. So for me, it's an opportunity tomorrow, you know, with them all to be there and to hopefully see a good performance from us, and yeah, hopefully a win.
Robbie McCrory retains his place in goal at the expense of Alan McGregor, and Ryan Jack is back in the squad after a month out through injury. Celtic go into the match after being crowned champions for the 2nd successive season.
If we were going there tomorrow to win it, there probably would have been a little bit more, you know, hype around it. So, you know, I think from that perspective, it doesn't feel sort of as intense in terms of the build-up to the game, but I don't think that will diminish the game itself. I still think the game will still have, you know, all the elements you expect in a derby game, so I don't think that'll be any different.
We will play like their supporters. The Celtic supporters are supporting us, but just like mentally, you know. So unfortunately that won't be possible for them to be there in loco, but we are just going to fight as like they are in the pitch.
Aaron Moy is a doubt for tomorrow's match, but James Forrest returns to the squad after 2 months on the sidelines.
Now, after being named on the shortlist for the PFA Scotland Manager of the Year award, St Mirren boss Stephen Robinson is urging his team to push for a European place. Robinson says tomorrow's match against Hearts is a must-win. It's 6th against 4th. The Saints defeated the Tynecastle side 2-0 in their last meeting, a result which cost Robbie Neilson his job.
I'll put out an attacking team, as attacking as we can do, obviously within our injury situations with strikers, but we've absolutely nothing to lose. There's no expectation for us to get this far, and I've told the boys we've got our praise for top 6 now. So we've enjoyed that. Let's go and get more praise. Let's get the recognition the players deserve by trying to get into Europe, and 100% must win.
We knew that obviously ultimately it's down to us. The manager can set us up, but us as players on the pitch, we got to go out there and deliver, and we hadn't been delivering for I think 6 or 7 games, and unfortunately it cost him his job. But now we got Nazy in, it's time for us to put things right.
As well as Stephen Robinson, Ange Postecoglou, Dunfermline boss James McPake and Stirling Albion manager Darren Young are also on the shortlist. Well, there are all of the games in the Premiership tomorrow. Rangers against Celtic is a 12:30 kickoff. Hibs are away to Aberdeen in the bottom half of the table. Second bottom, Kilmarnock host Livingston. Motherwell make the trip to Perth to face St Johnstone, and Dundee United host Ross County. And finally, this Sunday will mark 40 years since Dundee United won the league title. Jim McLean's side defeated city rivals Dundee at Dens Park to be crowned champions. It remains the club's greatest achievement.
I had looked towards the tunnel and there was this massive big clock there, which had been there for years. And I'm screaming for like, it must have been like for, I thought 20 minutes, but it was probably 5. And I just see this clock, like, you know, it was getting on towards 20 to 5. And oh God, there must only be a couple of minutes to go now, like. But that is my memory, and just the atmosphere after it, you know, after it, coming off the pitch and then coming back down here after it was, superb.
And that, folks, is all your sport tonight. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again next week.
Now for the weather with Philip, who's getting rather excited about the Eurovision Song Contest.
Hello, good evening. Well, if you're still making your mind up about whether to go down to Liverpool for the euphoria of Eurovision, maybe this will help just a little bit. Thankfully, the sun will shine a light this weekend down in Liverpool, but if you find yourself at Waterloo, think about things because you've gone too far. thankfully it will remain dry and sunny with temperatures reaching highs of 17 degrees Celsius on Saturday. So hopefully congratulations will be in order and the UK will go out with a boom bang a bang and not left with nil points. Now let's forget that happened and take a look at today's forecast.
Get set for a wet spell. TUI sponsors STV weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, thankfully things are remaining dry for much of the country and we will see clear spells. Later on in the night though, we do just start to see a frontal system creeping in from the northwest. That brings with it a bit more thicker cloud here. Temperature wise, getting down to lows of around 3 or 4 degrees Celsius under the clearest skies. Now looking ahead to tomorrow, a pleasant start to the weekend. We've got high pressure dominating our weather, so a dry day to come, plenty of bright sunny spells. Later on in the day, like I said, that frontal system just moves a little bit closer, so again that cloud will be thickening. In the best of the brightness, temperatures reaching highs of 19 or 20 degrees Celsius. Now looking ahead to Sunday, the frontal system that I mentioned finally starts to make its way eastwards across the country, and as it does, it brings with it a band of rain. Eastern areas will stay dry for longer before that rain arrives, and behind the frontal system we'll see further showers spreading in too. The winds will continue to pick up strength as that front moves through, gusts of up to 25 to 30 miles per hour. Now looking ahead to Monday, that frontal system will have cleared eastward, so we're in a bit of a drier interlude, albeit it will be cloudy, and it will also be feeling a little bit cooler with temperatures for most areas down a couple of degrees, highs of 13 or 14 Celsius. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV weather.
And finally, Glasgow may not have won the competition to be the host of Eurovision, but there's still plenty of excitement as the city gears up to celebrate the biggest night in music.
160 people are expected to watch the grand final concert tomorrow night. It's happening in the UK for the first time since 1988. And who better to bring us the details than our party reporter, Polly Bartlett.
Celebrations have started just a little bit early in Liverpool. And fans lucky enough to have made the journey are getting the party started.
Oh, it's electric. That we've only just arrived, but it's already buzzing, the place. Everyone's just so excited to see what's to come in the next couple of days.
I was here earlier this morning, just everyone in Liverpool is just taking it to their heart, and it's a really good atmosphere.
This weekend we should have been saying, hello world, it's Glasgow calling, but this time it wasn't to be. In the end, it was Liverpool that got 12 points, although you can't help but stand here in what would have been the Euro village and think about what could have been.
When we win the Eurovision Song Contest, and good luck to Mae Muller, I'm sure she'll be fantastic. So when we win it and it comes back to the UK next year, fingers crossed people can come to Glasgow and get the perfect Glaswegian welcome that we know they would have got.
Self-confessed Eurovision superfan and Glasgow MSP Pam Duncan-Glancy has travelled all over to watch the competition.
I went to the Eurovision in 2006 in Greece, and I suppose I should say now that a wee apology to the people on the door, because I kind of blagged my way in, incidentally, pretending that my ticket was for the real show, but it was for the rehearsal, and I managed to get through and pass the security and got into the Eurovision in 2006. Loved it. Best night ever.
Liverpool may be the host city, but this is definitely Ukraine's party.
And then I saw her face, now I'm a believer.
Lord Secondary in Cardonald has welcomed lots of Ukrainian refugees who say this moment is bittersweet.
There's a lot of Ukrainian kids in the school as well, so there's definitely been a bit of buzz about it and all that. So.
We are quite excited. I have to tell you that, Ukrainian community schools were absolutely gutted when we didn't get us in Glasgow. So we had to take Liverpool, People are kind of arguing, should it be in UK or should it be somewhere else? And you know what? I think they got it absolutely bang on.
Excitement is at fever pitch, and some here are even making the trip down when the school day ends.
This is unbelievable. I think it's been a lifelong dream to have Eurovision here, but then get a ticket to go is just, it's amazing. I'm so excited.
Anticipation is rising like a phoenix across the country as superfans look forward to making their mind up and going boom, bang a bang for Eurovision. Holly Bartlett, STV News.
So will you be watching, John?
Any chance they wear the sparkly spandex?
Please don't.
Good night.
Good night.